Hey guys, how's it going? Jam here, and welcome to another track build battle, where we'll be doing another manufacturer battle with two infinities going up against each other. And we start the episode with the IPL, which is a car that I actually really like, but I'm not sure that I could tell you why. It's not exactly the prettiest car, although I must admit I do quite like how it looks. It's not exactly the fastest car, no matter however you seem to build it to any set of regulations. But at the same time, it's not the slowest either. It can certainly usable in, say, a public hopper. And it's not necessarily the nicest to drive either, although it can be somewhat pleasant, I suppose. So, I don't know why, but I do have a soft spot for this car. I do quite like it, and I certainly wish it well in this series. I mean, I don't exactly ever drive a car in this series wanting it to do badly. That would be a bit counterproductive, but I think there's some cars that I'd certainly rather dislike after driving them in this series. None to be mentioned, of course, but I think you may know some of the ones I may be talking about if you've seen previous episodes. But anyway, on to talking about the IPL itself. And not only the IPL, but both Infinities were quite weird to build. Normally, I can match about a 5.7 handling stat and get at least 8.6 acceleration and your sort of mid to high 6 point somethings for speed. That's typically what I aim for, because throughout the series I've found that that's typically the best sort of mix to go for. For example, the Shelby last week that went phenomenally fast had that 8.6 acceleration, which is admittedly on the lower end in this series, and it had 5.9 handling, which is phenomenal. Well, this IPL seemed to struggle in the stat department. It did get 5.8 handling and 5.8 braking, which is certainly competitive, if not impressive. As I say, 5.7 is typically that sort of what I try to get to. I don't really want to go much lower than that. Maybe 5.6 would work, but anyway. But the thing is, it only got 8.5 acceleration, and I think it's because this car is just really rather heavy from standard. Even with all the weight taken out of it, it's still £3,000, which is, I mean, that's not that much lighter than the Dodge Daytona, the huge great boat that went last week. So, yeah, it's an odd one, but at the same time, no matter what I did to it, it retained a significant amount of top speed. Its stat was 6.9, which is one of the highest we've seen. I think, admittedly, again, last week the Dodge Daytona was a little bit quicker, but again, that was a little bit of an oddball. So, on paper, I wasn't really feeling very optimistic with this car. And I must admit, getting on track, it just was the same story. It was weird. I like this car. I want it to do well, but it just wasn't very good. I mean, I've already mentioned it was £3,000. It's got nearly 500 horsepower, which isn't a great power-to-weight ratio. Again, that's probably worse than both cars that we had last week. It's only got 400 foot-pounds of torque, so it's really lacking compared to the power output. The tyre sizes were perfectly average, 255s on the front and 275s on the rear. Nothing to really shout about with either of those, but again, perfectly usable. But this car just struggled. I really liked it. I really enjoyed driving it because sort of I know what the car is, and it was quite fun to drive, being able to drive a car that I really like. But at the same time, in terms of trying to extract speed out of this car, it just had a few too many weaknesses. There was two main things I can talk about. Firstly, the suspension. I mean, this is a track build battle. I'm trying to build these cars up into track spec. And if you think about proper track cars, things like Caterhams, KTMs, what's that white single-seater thing? The BAC Mono. They're typically really stiff suspension cars, really low to the ground, and really sort of give you that impression of aggressiveness with a very harsh, unforgiving setup. This car, I know the rest of the cars in this series all start as a road car, but this one was just really, really soft. And also, say a few corners ago, you saw a lot of tyre smoke being kicked up. This car struggled putting the power down. If it was at low revs in an open acceleration zone with lots of grip, for example, coming out of Spoon like now, it just struggled to get the power, or to sort of use the power. It just didn't have any power at the low revs. And if there was a very harsh acceleration zone, like coming out of Spoon, then it couldn't put the power down, it would just spin the tyres up. But anyway, that's sort of 3 or so laps. I've overrun a tad bit, and that's pretty much all I wanted to say about this Infinity IPL. So we'll move on to the older car, the G35. And here it is, the Infiniti G35. Now, once again, I haven't exactly done my research that I should have done, but I think I'm right in saying that this car is a sort of new addition for Forza 7. It wasn't in Forza 6, which is, and I don't think it was in Forza 5 either, and it was throughout that time that I sort of started to really like the IPL. But I do believe this car was in earlier versions of Forza. I'm tempted to say that it was in Forza 4. So it's sort of it's one of the returning cars to the franchise, and I must say, much like the IPL, I quite like this car for reasons unbeknown. It's not spectacular in any way, but I just quite like it. I suppose we all have cars like that. I don't think this car is probably not quite good looking as the IPL. I mean, the IPL is no stunner, but it is all right. But yeah, there's something about the Infinitis in this game that yeah, I just quite like. So it's another car that I was perhaps hoping more than most that would do really rather well. But unfortunately, it suffered very similar issues to its newer brother. And we'll start off with the stats and you'll see what I mean. It's got 5.7 in handling and braking, which is certainly passable, but the IPL managed to get 5.8, and that didn't exactly handle phenomenally, and that was also 5.8 braking. And the acceleration in this car is 8.4, which is one of the lowest we've seen. And normally, if you've got 5.7 acceleration, if you've got 5.7 handling and braking, your acceleration I expect to be higher. The Porsches that went a few episodes ago both had 5.7 handling and 5.7 braking, and they had 8.5 and 8.6 acceleration, although the top speed stat was lower, and I think that's what hinders this car. The top speed stat, even with the Forza Aero added on, retains at 7.2, which I think is the highest we've seen in the series. I did mention earlier the Dodge Daytona had a high one, but that was 7.1, so even that wasn't quite as quick as this car is once it gets going at top end. And to be honest, it really hindered the car, because I think the balance of stats gets skewed when they have a really high top end. They can't be as good elsewhere, because otherwise it would just be too good. And this track doesn't lead itself to needing a lot of top end, which is a shame, because it means the car will probably struggle. And it's interesting, because I can't quite work out why this car has better top end. I presume it's one of those Forza quirks of just using the car itself as a base. And I guess we never really know exactly what it is that makes cars quick at top end anyway. But I mean, this car is less powerful than the IPL. It's got 470 compared to just shy of 500. It weighs about £100 more, 3,100 compared to about 3,000. It does have more torque though, so it's got about 50 more torque, 450 as opposed to about 400. And the tyre sizes are pretty much the same. It's got the same 255s on the front, although it's a size down on the rear at 265s. But then with lower acceleration stat, lower power, and heavier weight as well, it doesn't really need the bigger tyres to get better traction out the corners. And I must say, this car was actually nicer to drive than the IPL. In a weird way, even though I've just told you it's less powerful and heavier, it felt nippier, quicker, more agile, lighter. And I think that might be due to the fact that this car has got a smaller wheelbase, because I don't think it's massively significant, but I think the IPL is a slightly bigger car in terms of sheer size, and that's about the only thing I can think of. And it as I say, it's weird because again, it shared the same issues of characteristics as the IPL, but they just weren't quite as severe. Out of acceleration zones like this, you can see me kicking up tyre smoke and really struggling to put the power down, which was the same as the IPL, but in general, this car wasn't as bad at it. And also, coming out of sort of flowing acceleration zones, it was able to utilise its power a little bit better. I think the gearing was a bit shorter, so it could utilise the high revs a bit better. So, yeah, I really thought this car was odds-on favourite at this point. It just seemed better to drive. But, you know, we won't know which one's actually quickest until we go and see the head-to-head. So, with this car finishing off its third lap, I think we should go and do just that. So here we are then, with both of these cars going as quick as they can go! Going down in towards turn 1, you would expect them to be very closely matched. The IPL with that bit of better acceleration, but the G35 with a bit better top speed. So nothing to really separate them at this point. Is anything going to do that under braking? I think there is a slight discrepancy there. You can just about tell by the camera change. I think the IPL, it looks neater there actually as well. Pulling ahead slightly, not kicking up the wheel spin out of turn 2. And I think it is definitely marginally in front at this point. The easiest way to tell, as always, is through the camera change. You can see it swapping much clearer than you can by telling which is where on track. And I think through the Degners, the IPL is just extending its lead. Can the G35 do anything around the hairpin? No, I think the IPL's actually got quite a significant lead at this point. We've had a lot of episodes where we've been really close between the two cars, but this is already looking like quite a big gap. Once again, through a nice nimble section, I said the G35 was nimbler. Is it going to do anything through the alternate chicane? Maybe. It looks like it's closed up a bit, but it's still definitely behind at this point. Only one more corner to go now, and going into Spoon, I can only say it so many times, the Infinity is just ahead. Look at that. That is a significantly noticeable gap, which is quite rare for this series. So we've just got a drag race to the line now. We know the Infinity G35 gets the better top speed, but accelerating to the line, it's only going to be the IPL, and it wins it by a good few car lengths. That was really rather significant. So we know it was fastest, but how fast was it? Well, not very. The Infinity going into 15th place, somehow splitting the Maloo and the Sylvia in a very crowded area. While I'm here, I also forgot to mention that Yami suggested I do this video, so a big shout out to him, and thank you very much for suggesting it. Now, we know that I like these cars, but they're really not that likeable, and, well, they're not likeable because they're not very fast. It's as simple as that. The G35 was indeed significantly slower than the IPL, about half a second down, just avoiding being in the bottom 3 ahead of 2 rear-wheel drive swap cars and a C63 that I was really surprised by. Anyway, that is the end of this video, guys. Like it if you liked it, comment if you got something to say about it, but until the next one, goodbye.